Hello and welcome to Home Media Minefield Presents Let's See What's Out There, an entertainment live stream and podcast focused on film, television, and related media. In today's episode, we're going to have a look at the horror film franchise Final Destination. So we'll be talking about all of the films in that series in spoilerific detail. If it's your first time here, welcome. Please do consider subscribing to the channel and checking out some of our other work. As I said, we cover movies, TV shows, and all sorts of media entertainment here on this channel. My name is Keith Isles. I'm an independent filmmaker and a lifelong enthusiast about movies. I love talking about film. I love obviously watching films, making films, analyzing films, reading about films, but wherever possible, the thing I like most of all is to discuss films in a forum like this with like-minded individuals. So I am really pleased to welcome back two guests that have been on previous video streams with me where we've talked about various horror franchises from Halloween to Texas Chainsaw Massacre to Friday the 13th, Saw, all sorts of stuff. So go and check that out. I will add this to a playlist. But first of all, joining me from California, I've got author and filmmaker and the host of the Movie Timelines channel, which check that out, by the way, if you haven't already. It's really good. Welcome, Josh Spiegel. Hey, Josh.
Hey, how's it going?
All right. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well.
Good. We're not alone with this. Joining us also from sunny London, like myself, I have filmmaker and horror film enthusiast from Turtle Canyon Media, Al Clayton Reed. How you doing, Al?
Hi. Good. How's it going?
Yeah, not bad. Here we are again.
I know it's been a long time. It's nice to see you both.
It has been a while since we've done one of these particular ones, and normally we do these as live streams. Today we're just putting this out as a video stream just because of some time difference. Well, obviously time different issues, of course, but yeah, I know over the last year or so we've tried to get together to do these. We talked about, I think, The Exorcist, but then of course, you know, that last one was dreadful, so I don't think we bothered. And we're always talking about other franchises and whatever. But Josh, you suggested Final Destination, and I'm really glad that you did. So yeah, here we are to get into that.
Yeah, they're fun movies. It's like I'm so glad. Like if any franchise is gonna get unearthed and they're gonna be like, yeah, we're gonna make another one. Like, keep on giving me Final Destinations, and they don't even have to be like just make the same movie over and over and over again, which is basically what they're doing. I'm fine with it. Just do this formula.
Yeah. Well, it's so different. I mean, obviously, a lot of the other franchises that we've talked about, in this horror genre, as sort of centered around, in most cases, like a slasher or a central character as being the evil antagonist of the series. But in this case, it's a little bit different because it is kind of fate and nature and death itself is the antagonist. So it's kind of it sort of sits on its own a little bit, doesn't it, this one?
Yeah, I always think like you can see if you chart how we got to the original, especially that you've got, every slasher film really, when you boil it right down, it is kind of about those things anyway. It's about like unrelenting death that we can't escape, and that whole vibe of like fate following, the Halloween, the original, they talk so much about fate and trying to face your fear and all of that stuff. And then it's like, I guess when the first one came out in 2000, it being right on the tail end of all the kind of really meta slasher movies and everything, and you can just absolutely see it's such a product of the time of someone going, what could this one be? Like, what villain could this be? And you're like, well, just death, just make it that. And it's such a great idea that it's like, yeah, it works.
No, definitely. And, we've now had 6 films in 25 years. So it's been one of those where I feel like they kind of haven't overdone it. But
Mm,
at the same time, we've got enough films to be able to have one of these sort of franchise conversations.
Yeah.
So what's you? I mean, you guys. I always sort of usually ask you this about your sort of relationship and background with the franchise. I mean, obviously, this one's a little bit different to some of the others we've talked about, because some of the others we've talked about exist either before some of us were born, or even came out when we were young children or whatever, and
mm.
we weren't necessarily able to see them until they came on home video or television or whatever. But with this one obviously being a fairly young franchise at only 25 years, what was your guys' initial entry into this? Did you see it right from the very beginning, or did you sort of pick up on this later? Josh, what about you? Where were you with this?
I mean, I definitely saw the first one in the theater. I
Yeah.
went to the movie theater. I remember being kind of excited about it and thinking this looks like a cool one. And I saw it, and it's funny because those little moments where everything is sort of happening, where you get these crazy death scenarios happening in the movie theater. Man, it was really tense. Like, it's funny because when I watch it now at home, I'm like, it's kind of like this quaint little movie. But I remember watching that in a movie theater and being like really nervous, not like scared, just nervous the whole time. And I think the first one is the only one that I've seen in the movie theater since then. I think the other ones I've just watched at home.
Oh, really? Okay.
I believe so. I don't recall seeing any of the other ones in the theater afterwards, but definitely the first one I know I was at the theater, and I've always this has been a franchise that I've never like loved, like, oh god, this movie, I'm obsessed with this, I think about it, but I enjoy every single one of them, and I look forward to more of them because they're just silly, quick, like disposable, fun little horror flicks.
Yeah. What about you, Al?
I mean, incredibly, very, very similar. Like, it certainly, the
Really?
first one came out when I was 15, which was
Right.
just the absolute perfect time. I was heavily into just watching every horror and slasher anyway. And you, like I alluded to before, like, you just had that kind of meta boom of slashes, and then it was like it's dying out, but then there's this new thing. I just remember at the time, certainly in the UK, you'll probably remember, Keith, it was just like this was a big deal. This film was, you got to see it. It's so crazy, like it's so scary and everything. And I remember going with some friends at the time, and it was just like, I think also being 15 and in the UK, there hadn't been long that I could get into see horror movies in a cinema setting.
Right.
So even like Scream and stuff like that, I had to wait for home video. Far too young to go and see it. So
Yeah,
this
yeah.
was that time where it's like, oh, I can actually go and see these things on the big screen. So it was just like, I remember loving it so much at the time because it felt like, oh, this is a horror film for me right now. It felt so urgent. Yeah, just really great. And then similarly to Josh, really, it's not one of those like go, oh my God, I can't wait for the next one. This is gonna be so great. And I don't think anyone, I don't think I've ever met anyone that has that same fervor like we might do for another Michael Myers or something like that. But it is one of those horror franchises where, like Josh said, you're just like, oh, cool, another one. That'll be fun. We kind of know what we're going to get. It'll be fun. What are they going to do next? Like what? And it's so about. I know they're all about these franchises are a lot about the kind of how far can you go with the death scenes, but this one really, especially rewatching them now, I was like, that really was the thing with these. Is like each death is so elaborate and kind of Rube Goldberg, and
Yeah.
just there's so much going on with each one that
Yeah.
I think, yeah, you can't not just enjoy that and go along for the ride.
No, exactly. I mean, we've had a little bit of a gap. I mean, there's been like a sort of 14-year gap, I think it is, between the fifth film and this one, Bloodlines, which is still in, while we're recording this, is still in theaters at the moment. Bit different to you guys in so much. I know I'm a few years older than you both, I think, but I've seen all of these in the cinema. I mean, for me, these have been event movies. I've got them all on, obviously, home media Minefield. I've got them all on physical media as well with the hold on, let's go into a better in the collection. That was the 5-film collection on Blu-ray. I think this is an Australian version because it had more special features on than some of the others. But yeah, I mean, I've seen them all in the cinema, as I said, event movies, if you like. But one of the things that I guess if you guys only saw them on home video, you might not, or physical media, you might not have experienced this. So The Final Destination, which was the fourth film, came out in 2009. And that was right on the back of, Avatar having sort of brought 3D back to the movies, and this whole sort of 3D boom that we had for a few years there. And obviously this being the type of horror film that it is, like you said, with the sort of Rube Goldberg esque accidents and stuff, that they really did play on that. So the Final Destination here at the theater was actually presented in 3D. So I don't know, did you guys get to see that?
Yeah, I saw. So I think I've seen 1, 2, 4, and 6 in cinemas, and the other two I think I just wasn't involved enough. But yeah, I did see that one, partly because it's like, oh god, the 3D thing's back. Let's see what we've got. Like Saw 7, really.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And suddenly things flying out the screen at you and stuff.
Yeah.
What about you, Josh? Did you see the fourth one in 3D?
Well, part 4 and 5 were both they were both 3D. They were both, but I did not see them in 3D. Honestly, I have troubles with the 3D. Those glasses just give me really big headaches, so I can't wear them. So I skip 3D movies anyway. If there's a 3D and a 2D option, I will go to the 2D option because it hurts my eyes. So I can't do it. So I would generally skip it anyway.
Right. I've noticed actually they've just it seems to be sort of coming back in a weird way because they've just released tickets for the IMAX experience of the new Superman, the James Gunn Superman coming out. They've released the tickets for those recently, and there are two options. You can see it in 2D or 3D, and I was quite surprised to see that there was a 3D version. I'm like, oh my god, are we going back to that again?
It does feel like it's about time, doesn't it? Hang on. It was the 50s, the 80s, 2009 to 12.
Yeah.
No, it's a bit early to do it trying again.
Yeah.
It's usually when the studios are going, oh my god, everything's gone out of business. They just go, let's try that again, see what happens.
I was going to say, is that not what they're saying now? Probably.
Well, yeah. So maybe it's high time.
Well, I mean, they have to do something to get people back into the theaters, and I mean, heaven forbid they just make a good movie worth going to the theater to see.
Yeah. But that's the thing. It's a different thing, but like, you're so right, and I think about this almost every day. They keep saying this stuff like, no one's going to theaters. Oh, well, we're just going to give up. But you're so right, because when they actually have done that and they just make really good movie-going experiences, usually that aren't just existing IP and do something that people want to go out and watch, time and time again, they do it. And I always think of like the Barbie and Oppenheimer thing. It's like, those are like yes, one of them's IP, but like they're like interesting, long, complicated, intelligent films, and everyone went to see them. So just stop doing the wrong stuff. Anyway, that's another show.
Not to get off on a tangent, but I will say that we, the audience, reinforce that though, because when there are original, fresh, non-IP movies, we don't go see them. So,
Well, I mean, I
there's
do.
been a lot of like original flops this year, and last year as well too. And then then the Minecraft movie makes $1 billion. So
yeah, no, it's such a shame. I mean, there's a big push over here at the moment because I mean, I obviously I see loads of movies anyway because of BAFTA and just my obsession and all of this sort of stuff and BFI screenings and all of this sort of thing. But there's a big push at the moment over here. Premium format is the thing, and certainly recently with Sinners and with Mission Impossible, etc. They've specifically shot those films with IMAX cameras for the IMAX format, and we're lucky enough we've got one of the 15 Perth 70mm film IMAX studios over here. I think it's one of 10 in the world, and 9 of them are in North America, but we've got one here in London. So seeing something like Sinners, for example, on that in that premium format was quite something else. And obviously some of the older Mission Impossible films, it's like sort of every other one has been shot in IMAX, so specifically for it. And it does make a difference. In fact, when we get to it, Final Destination's Bloodlines is actually a film that was shot for IMAX, and saw it in digital IMAX. It's not quite the same as film IMAX, but it's still a larger aspect ratio, and they were quite creative in the transitions between those scenes. So yeah, it's a complicated one, the whole getting people into the theaters, but this has been really, really fun. So just I always give shout out credits and stuff for these things. So this we date back to the late 90s, and this originally came from Jeffrey Reddick, was kind of the creator of this franchise. And the story is he wrote a spec script for the X-Files, and it wasn't specifically, it was just using that format and using those characters, etc. And there was some talk about having an episode where Scully's brother or something could predict things and in that, but Glenn Morgan and James Wong, who were the X-Files producers, they kind of thought this was actually better as a film idea, and it developed from there. So I do actually quite like the fact that its origins sort of have a very loose connection to the X-Files, because I do you could imagine this being an X-File of sorts, but instead it's a big franchise. So but were you guys aware of that? I think it's fairly common knowledge out there. But that was good. And then of course the other constant in these movies, well, fairly consistent anyway, is the character William J.B. Bloodworth, who was played by the now late Tony Todd, appearing obviously in the first and second installments, and then coming back for the fifth and sixth installments, and even had, I believe, a voice cameo in the third one or something, as on the roller coaster.
That's right. Yeah,
he's the voice of the roller coaster, and actually in the ending on the train, he's you can hear his voice on the train.
Right. Yeah. So it's obviously very sad, because Tony Todd's a bit of a acting legend, particularly in the horror genre. But at the same time, it was kind of fitting that he was able, I think at the time he did Bloodlines, he knew the end was near, and was able to sort of, round off the character and the story, which not everybody gets the chance to do. So, but thoughts on that character?
I mean, it was such a great aspect of the series because it was, you know, such a mystery while you were watching them and as they were unfolding. Because I remember after the first one, like you were just convinced that he was death, that he was the physical embodiment of death. And then the second you watch the second one, and you're like, no, I don't know, is he? And it's like in each movie, you kind of like just felt a little bit more like, wait, is he on death's side or is he on the human side? What's the deal with this guy? And it was just a really great element because the movie is never really about the lore. Like that whole franchise is never about the lore, and Bloodworth is probably one of the only like lore elements of the whole thing. So he's got a pretty unique situation there.
Yeah, he has that. I guess he has that like Dr. Loomis place in the whole of this franchise, doesn't he? Where it it's a simple, but it's a high concept for us to just accept. And obviously, the characters, the teenagers in all of them, they need to just get on board with this. It's like this is real, face it. And I think that's the best use of a character like that when you can just be like, he's kind of out there already, and he plays it that way. So, but he's like just going to tell you this is the world you're getting into, so just get on board. And like the fact that, as you said, Josh, like it is pretty formulaic. The fact that you can like rely on him to come back and do that a couple more times is like, yeah, we know that worked in the first one. Let's jump him in. But then I think, like you said, Keith, and I guess this is a bit spoilery for this one, but I'm sure people are okay
We've
with that by
already
now.
said spoiler warnings. So
Exactly right.
well,
But I feel like it was so. It's kind of really bittersweet because of that we lost him so soon after it, but it really did feel like you said, that doesn't really come along where an actor is thinking, I probably won't do this job again. And it was a proper chance. And probably he's only on screen for like 8 minutes or something, but it's just like, oh, you've actually rounded a character there completely. And finally attended to what Josh was kind of saying. He's like, oh, okay, we know exactly how you got into this world now.
yeah,
Which, yeah, like it's an unfortunate reason why, but it's kind of like, oh, I liked that they were able to do that with a character, which you just don't really get in franchises normally.
yeah, no, for sure. It was nice that he got, and also, because of the latest film, some backstory as well, which is quite important. And I mean, well, I guess we'll get into that. But is there anything, sort of? I tend to jump around a bit, which isn't always helpful on these things. But is there anything in terms of the films in general, or any specifics in the films that you guys want to talk about or focus on?
I think we'll get into this as we go along, but it's funny because doing this, I was like, oh, I need to rewatch them all. I wanted to do that before Bloodlines
That's
anyway,
not
so I was
like
like,
you.
right, watch them all. Most of them I'd only ever seen once as well. So it's not a franchise like with Halloween where I know them all off by heart. Like I wanted to go through, watch them all. I must say, watching 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the space of like 2 days, the formula is pretty clear. And I think I think like you kind of said, it's taken 25 years to get 6, and I think any more people would be more tired a lot quicker because it just when you put them all together like that, you're like, oh wow, this is like beat for beat, scene after scene, characters, they're all the same. Um, and it works. Like 100% it works. It's like they nailed it with the first one, and then they went, let's just do that again and again. And I think what was great, and we'll come to it in more detail, Bloodlines was like, oh wow, you found a different story to tell with this. Like we're still getting the beats that we want, but you've actually found a different way of doing this story.
Yes.
But still tying it. It doesn't feel like a complete retcon or something really outside of it. This is like cool. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was really surprised by that. It's nice.
Yeah, I mean, from a mythology point of view, I like the fact that it sort of serves as a prequel and a sequel to everything that we've seen, and doesn't really sort of contradict it in any way. So rather than, even though it is sort of a reboot, it's not like a reset reboot. It's more of a, it adds to the lore we've already got, the mythology that's already there, and I thought in a pretty creative way. Actually, I was quite impressed with all that. But yeah, I mean, in terms of, especially with Josh being the timeline expert, this is just something I pulled off the internet, which the dates wise, I don't necessarily 100% agree with all this, but you know, as we know, the sort of pre-credits bit of Bloodlines takes place in the late 60s, and then something I always thought was a rather ingenious with Final Destination 5 is I remember being really bothered that one of the characters had a phone that looked so old, and I'm like, why is that guy, why did props give that guy like an old flip phone? It was kind of, you know, it almost took me out for a minute. And then when you get to the finale and realize that this has actually taken place just prior to the original film, you know, in 99/2000, however you want to look at it, I did kind of like that little twist on the fifth one. I was kind of like, oh, I like that. And then obviously, you know, when it says post 2009, I mean, personally, I looked at Bloodlines, the second part of it, as being 2025. I don't know about you guys. Sort of your views on it as well.
Yeah, nothing suggested it wasn't to me that I can think of, but
yeah. What do you think? You, Josh, I know you're the guy that goes through, and again, anybody watching this that hasn't subscribed to Josh's channel and watched his videos, please do, because that's how I know Josh, is through looking at his videos. But you go into amazing detail where you'll do freeze frames of screens where there's calendars in the background and all of this sort of thing to try and actually make sense of movie timelines, when you think that movies are all about playing with time anyway. That's kind of what we do with when we make movies. And I just think you know, that stuff's great. I love it. What's your thoughts on this? Do you think whoever did this online has nailed it, or are you?
Well, it has a little bit of a fractured timeline because part 5 kind of derails everything, because they sort of do tend to insinuate that things in the first movie do take place in 99, but then when the fifth movie came out and they said it in the past and they do a close-up of that plane ticket, there's like 2 different instances in part 5 where they show the first movie is taking place in 2000,
right,
which kind of throws everything off a little bit. So there's a couple of like little bubbles, but thankfully there's not a ton of continuity between those films that like kind of rely on that. As a matter of fact, I get a little frustrated with how the franchise goes, because in the first 2 movies they make it clear that like the general public knows about this, because like there's TV programs and interviews, and in the second film when they say, I think this is happening, everyone else in the car is kind of like, oh yeah, we saw about that. That is what happened. Like no one needs convinced that this is what's going on, because it was such a public thing. And then they sort of drop that for all the other movies.
Yeah. Because those first 4 movies in terms of release was sort of every 3 years, I think it was like 2000, 2003, 2006, 2009, and then 2011 was when Final Destination 5 came out, which, as I said, was obviously a prequel anyway. And then you know, we've had quite a big time jump, but I like the fact that the film's Bloodlines started off back in the sort of late 60s, so you know, to sort of join it all together, and I thought that was actually quite nicely done. But yes, it's not, I mean, like you said, because there's not a lot of crossover characters. I mean, there are a few, but there's not. It's not like it's not like some of the other franchises we've covered where the timeline and is very important because of the age of the characters and the actors who are playing them and all of this sort of stuff. It is a bit more fluid in this, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the only things that sticks out is that when you have Bloodworth in part 5, and it's supposed to be before part one. He's very clearly like considerably older looking, which
Yeah.
you know.
Hey, just remember Jigsaw. That's all.
Yeah,
I,
oh God, yeah.
I was like, watch Jigsaw. You're like, this guy, what?
Yes.
But I always feel like I think we just have to allow that with those
Yes.
because otherwise, I guess now otherwise they de-age, and I'm like, well, I don't feel great about when they do that either. It
No.
seems it's not good enough yet, really.
And I prefer it to when they change the actor as well.
God,
I mean,
especially with someone like that, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, depending on, you know, how big the time jump is or whatever, and yeah, I don't know.
This is super off kilter, really, but I do think the audience of this show would appreciate it. Did you guys watch 24 when it was, you know, when 24 was a big show?
I loved 24.
This is something that like people did not mention at the time, but it still bugs me so much that Tony Todd plays a cop in season 3, and then in season 7 he plays an African warlord, and they're just like, no one goes, but that's the same guy, right? Like at no point have they just went, Tony Todd was good in this show, wasn't he? Let's just bring him back and no one will remember. And it's like, no, we all remember. Why don't know? So yeah, speaking of Tony Todd and continuity,
there you go.
It's kind of in there. Yeah,
it's sort of connected. I mean, the thing that always puzzled me with 24 is I was always like, I never understood why they had to do so many year jumps all the time. I was like, apart from the, you know, getting a different president, I guess. But you thought, well, he could have had another bad day in the same year, right?
Yeah, but you just can't have that many moles in CTU that often. I think we would soon disbelieve it.
I've got a whole load of love for 24, but that's a whole other podcast. Yes.
Well, Keith, if you ever want to do one about it, I
I
know a lot of it off by heart.
Would take a while though.
I've just done it this year. I did it this year. I've watched every series this year, every single one.
I'm glad you have the time to do that, Al. That's because
you're
younger.
This is the awful thing. I don't. I genuinely don't. I need more sleep.
Like Jack Bauer, then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. So there you go. Tony Todd, a connection to this franchise and that. Yes. But other than that, I know there was the character. Oh, I'm just trying to look it up because it's gone out of my head. Oh yeah, Clear Rivers, who Ali Larter played. She was obviously she appeared in the second film as well, although she wasn't sort of the main part of that narrative. But I think that was it, wasn't it, in terms of crossover characters?
She does not survive the second one at all.
Yeah, and then there are some we still don't know about, right? The third film was kind of a bit of an anomaly in that sense, wasn't it? Because we don't know for sure if Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character died or not, right?
Because it kind of ends.
She died. There's no surviving that. So.
Surely, yeah.
I mean,
they just don't specify it, do they? But. Yeah,
the only ones that are still alive are Kimberly and Burke from part 2, and they have tried in multiple follow-ups to kill them, but they have been unable. And then thankfully, part 6 confirmed that at the very least, Kimberly is still alive.
Yeah.
So she gets.
I thought that was.
There's been some home media extras which kind of aren't canon as such, but there was one that implied they died in a house fire or something a year later, and I know there's also
fell into a wood chipper.
A wood chipper.
Yeah, into a wood chipper.
A wood chipper. Yeah. And
that's one of the things I really loved about it in general is that. I don't know how intentional that almost has been with Kimberly, but it's like that means that you can keep doing them and keep being invested in people trying to escape death because you're like, someone did. Because I think what's really cool about the series in general is that often your final guy or final girl does die at the end, which is great. Like that just wasn't ever really done properly before. as in a big franchise, especially. It was like they're going to survive, they're going to survive, they've survived, and then like as a coda, we're going to kill them now, just to sort of hammer home the point that you can't escape death. And the fact that one person from an earlier film is technically still around kind of proves that okay, it is possible that these characters could survive. And I think it's almost like too clever for. I feel like they didn't intend that, but it was like you've absolutely nailed that because it means you can do this forever.
Yeah.
Well, they actually did try to kill them because they were going to have Kimberly and Burke on the train at the ending of part 3 and have them both be killed. But unfortunately, one of the actors, they've never said, they haven't said which of the two. One of the actors was unavailable, and they just thought it didn't make sense to only bring one of them back. So they scrapped that. But they had planned to kill them both, which is why they did that little deleted, the little bit that ended up being deleted. But originally, their plan was to have them both be killed on the train.
Nice.
So
yeah, one of the great things actually about the physical media release for these films is there is quite a lot of information, bonus materials, commentaries, making of featurettes, all of that sort of thing, deleted scenes. And you can. What I really like is the detail, and particularly when we get onto the latest film, the detail in the sort of mythology of it. I love it, where you've got these diagrams in books and newspaper articles and all of that sort of stuff. I love all of that. I love that sort of attention to detail. That's that sort of Fincher stroke Christopher Nolan levels of detail, with all those things, and I love it. Makes it feel more real.
Yeah.
And therefore more terrifying.
Yeah.
So cool. Any particular? I mean, I've got a few in my head, but are there any particular deaths along the series that sit with you as particularly? I mean, they're all pretty horrible, but any that sort of stand out?
Oh man, there's a bunch. I know for the smaller one that I think that always sticks with me, that it's one that I always get a laugh out of it. I always think it's so much fun. Is the teenage kid getting smashed by the glass in part 2? I just think it's such a fun out of nowhere kill scene, and then they have the dummy body just get obliterated. That's a fun one.
Yes.
What about you, Al? The one that I still remember so clearly, and I think partly because it's the first film, like I said, I saw it in the cinema, and it was a proper cinema moment where you felt everyone in the room go, "Whoa!" It's when the character in the first one just goes, "Well, you can just drop fucking dead," and they just straight out. It's just like all the kind of really elaborate, tense ones with the garroting and the bath and all of that stuff was like, this is so exciting and nervous. But that one was a proper jump scare, great moment. It was a proper people chucking their popcorn moment, which you just nailed it because it was and I feel like I'm not sure that it would be surprising enough today for some reason. I feel like we'd see that coming a bit more, but then I just remember it being like, whoa, I did not think that was going to happen, That was definitely a good one. I think watching them recently, I was like I've never been on a sunbed and I don't intend to, but the sunbed is pretty. It also feels pretty uncomfortable. You've just made these people naked, and now you just really, really. It goes on for such a long time. It's probably the longest of all of them. It just feels like
it's got the most.
I don't think you do that today.
Yeah, it's got the most 80s feel for the
yeah.
nudity, hasn't it? That one, the gratuitous nudity and stuff. But I'll tell you one that always gets me. I'm lucky enough that I've got reasonably good eyesight. I've never, I do wear glasses for certain things, but my eyesight is good enough that I can sort of get by like I am right now without them. And so I've never felt the need, that being the case, to need to have laser surgery or anything, because I'm very queasy with eyes. I wouldn't be able to wear contact lenses, for example. It's just something that I can't get my head round. I wouldn't be able to do that. And as I said, thankfully, my eyesight's, touch wood, at the moment, not that bad that I need to. But I know it's in the fifth film, but that laser eye surgery thing still sets my teeth on edge to this day. It's just because I've got a thing about eyes, and I just don't like the idea of it being touched and all that. And that was particularly nasty, particularly when you said it goes right, they carry it on and on and on to the point when he's fallen out the building and the eyes sort of popped out, it then gets run over by a car, and it's like, talk about rub that one in. Why don't you?
I think that's why, again, like as Josh was saying before, that's why this franchise is so fun if you're kind of into horror movies and stuff, is that they've above so many other franchises, they go out of their way to think, what do just people in everyday life freak out about? And for you, and there's something for everyone in, the longer the franchise runs, they'll find something for everyone until, like, people freak out about being, the big things, being on a plane and something going wrong. Like, you freak out about driving on the motorway, something going wrong. And then there's the specific ones. So like for you, Keith, there's like, oh, we've got an eye one, great, because there's lots of people that are really freaked out by eyes. There's like a dentist one, there's all these little things, and you're sort of covering everyone's everyday little fears. It's great.
I'm a wuss. I'm freaked out about everything. Dentist freaks me out, and trust me, if I'm driving and there's a log truck, I always try and get ahead of it.
Yeah, I think anyone of a certain age that remembers seeing that film, especially I think that one on a big screen, you were like, oh my god, yeah, I don't get near that. Yeah,
no, definitely.
Even the roller coaster thing, you're like,
oh yeah. I mean,
I love roller coasters, but
no, absolutely. I'm a big roller coaster person, and theme parks and stuff. But yeah, I must admit, after I saw that film, the next time I went on one, I'm like, is this locked down properly?
I think that's why it's so resonant, and I think people do just love to see it, because you're like, I can safely really face those everyday things that freak me out, but I can just enjoy them. And I think, although, like I said, a lot of franchises do touch upon that stuff, this one is, I can't think of anything else that is like, we're doing exactly that. It's like, it's almost like they've focus grouped, hey, what's everyone afraid of? And they've gone, oh, I hate following like a log truck. Great, we're doing the log truck. Like, it's so specific to those things. It's great.
Yeah, I think they have. I was listening to an interview about the latest film, and they were saying about how they just have a day in a boardroom, sort of sat round a table, just spitballing all sorts of ideas and anything. It's open to, there's a team of people, and it's open to anyone, and they come up with all sorts of things. And it's well, I mean, this is a franchise that could go on and on, because there's always going to be something, right?
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, and that is part of the fun of it, is like every time there's a new franchise, you wonder what the big disaster is going to be. And it's always one of the fun things to kind of think about. And I think the log one works really well, because a lot of them are kind of typical, like, plane crash. Oh, everyone's afraid of plane crash. Roller coaster, everyone's afraid of. But like, most of them are capitalizing on existing fears. I feel like the second one is the first one is just like, no, we're going to create a new fear. People are already afraid to get onto an airplane or get on a roller coaster. But like after that movie, it was like you said, no one wants to follow a logging truck anymore. For sure.
And nobody's going to throw pasta out of a window again. Yeah.
Actually, the one that I always think of it as well, but it's not been in one of the movies, is like a logging truck. The trucks that carry brand new cars. Those cars just always look to me like they're just gonna, like, if you've not tightened something, those cars, I'm like, I'm getting away. Yeah, get away from those things.
Well, Michael Bay's cashed in on that one, hasn't he? With
that's it. Yeah, with Bad Boys 2. Yes. Yeah. But, I mean, that specifically is like, you need like people to throw the cars off at you. And it just, even in Bad Boys, it's just like, well, that's fun, isn't it? That'd be fun. But yeah, I feel like if they'd have put that into that scene as well, you're like, oh god, yeah, never want to go near those trucks.
Yeah. Oh well, and so those are the main ones. I mean, there's a lot, isn't there? The other one that always made me sort of just really uncomfortable to watch was the butt drain one. That was the 3D one, actually, the Final Destination, where the guy is in the pool. And
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
In the drain thing and the pressure, and that was just nasty.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because like I do think that kill and the tanning beds, both of those are more drawn out and they seem more painful, and they both seem like F these characters in particular kind of kills, which is funny because the guy in part 4 is kind of like a dick and probably like they make you want him, but like the bimbo girls is like they don't. What did they do? What did they do?
Yeah,
they were just silly, fun girl. Like they were silly teenage girls. Like and so it is funny that they got that. They got one of the most horrifying, painful deaths. But that guy, the butt guy, I think they figured that out and were just like, yeah, it'll make you kind of happy about this guy getting this.
Yeah. We'll make sure he's a bad guy, and then and then we'll get rid of him quickly. I mean, if they really wanted a really scary film, they'd have let him survive. It's probably more accurate to a lot of how the world is at the moment, anyway.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of any others. Actually, the one thing I love about the one, as problematic as it is in this day and age, really, but the tanning beds, that it's got such a brilliant edit when it's like overhead of the tanning beds and then it hard cuts to their graves and it's like the exact same cut. If anyone hasn't watched it for a long time, just look at that moment. It's like, when they did that edit, they'd have been like, yeah, that was good. We nailed that. That's like a nice moment.
Exactly.
Well, you're talking about the bad guy living. One of my favorite things, and it's one of those instances of if only if things had gone this way. But the jerky dude in the first movie, the kind of like prick character, originally survived the whole thing. Like he lived, and so that the ending where they now go to Paris and he gets smashed by the swinging sign, which is another great moment like that. Who's next? But no, that was a reshoot because and I liked that the kind of jerky character originally survived that.
Yeah.
I thought that actually would have been a nice little, subverting of an expectation.
Exactly. Yeah. Very much subversing the norm. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't. There's not many that do that, and
no,
that would be good.
Yeah.
And then in the world, I do kind of like, again, I love it when films do this, when they sort of create their own little universe. So in the world of these films, you've got the Heiss Ale company, that appears. I think it appears in all of them. I'm not sure. Maybe it wasn't in the first one. Maybe it wasn't.
I read somewhere. I'm sure I read somewhere because I was looking at just behind the scenes stuff about Bloodlines, and I'm sure I read somewhere that it is in all of them at some point. Yeah.
I just like those little silly little things like that. But
and there were loads in Bloodlines. I feel like I need to see it again because I missed half of them. But like even when they're going, what was the name of the hospital? It's like Rivers, and she goes Clear Rivers.
Clear Rivers.
I was like, nice, good.
That was funny. Yeah. Did you? One of the things about the new film as well that I because one of the things when I go and see a movie now, I always get kind of annoyed because trailers will give a lot away. I'll ask if you've seen it before I spoil it, but did you guys see a couple of years ago that film Abigail?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So and again, sorry out there, people listening or watching, but spoiler for that. She's a vampire, right?
Yeah.
But I did sort of think when I saw and I'd seen the trailer that told us that, and the poster kind of gives it away, everything. But I did sort of think if I'd just gone in to see that, I would have thought it was a thriller about a kidnapping. It would have done the whole sort of Dusk Till Dawn type thing, whereas you think it's one thing and it's something completely different. And I'm kind of annoyed by the trailer. So there's a film at the this year that came out which I thought was rather good called Companion.
Yeah.
And I've said to everyone I've recommended it to, I said, don't read anything about it. Don't watch the trailer. Don't even look at the poster. Just go and see the film and go along with the film, and you'll have a fantastic time, because I just don't like spoilers. But the reason I'm getting into that is I was very excited for the new film when I saw the trailer, but I was kind of annoyed because I thought, oh, well, that gives one of the kills away and it's pretty fucking awesome and blah, blah, blah. But I loved, again, props to the filmmakers. I loved the way they subverted that when we saw the film, and you still have that scene, but the fact that he didn't die. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. That's when marketing is done well, you know?
Yeah.
I did luck out, and I saw Companion without any sort of I knew nothing about it except for the title, and like when it gets to that moment, I was like, that was, even in the course of the film itself, a really nice red herring because they have that big long scene, which is funny because I just read a thing from the filmmakers saying that death wasn't actually doing that was just that character's bad luck. All of that stuff that happened to that guy, death was like somewhere else. He's just like, that wasn't me.
Well, because he wasn't related in the same way either.
Yes,
which I thought was quite funny. In fact, while we're talking about the filmmakers, so we've got Zach Lipovsky and Adam B. Stein, who are the directors of the latest film. And I have to say, I'm very happy about this, and it's not often I plug some of my past work, but Fright Fest 2019, they had a film in Fright Fest called Freaks, which was, a much lower budget horror film, very good. And I was lucky enough to meet Zach at that event. There's a picture of me with him in the middle there for the people who are watching this. And I spoke to him, and he was very gracious. He agreed to come on the podcast that I had. So at the time I had a podcast called Movie Heaven, Movie Hell, which was myself and Simon Aitken. And when I was up in Glasgow, my good friend in the other picture there, William McLaughlin, and I interviewed Zach, and he got Adam in on the interview as well, across from the States. And I don't normally go back and listen to any of my work, but I did listen to it prior to this, because they do, I let them do most of the talking as they were the guests. And they went into their sort of backstory about how they got into the industry and what films inspired them and how they made it and all of this sort of thing. And I'll put a link in the show notes. I do urge people to go back and listen to that, because I'm for one, I'm just really happy that these guys, as I said, they were gracious enough to come on. They spoke very well about, the industry and where their journey was to that point, which was, a fairly low budget independent horror feature that had sold. But I'm just glad that here we are, 6 years later, and they're now, because they said to me that their ambition was to direct, big franchise movies, and they've bought it back, and I just think that's absolutely brilliant. So I just wanted to pause slightly there to sort of shout out about that, because I just think it's great to see
that's
talent
great.
being recognized.
I'd go as far to say, and this will spur an agreement or not, I think they've also made the best one. So good for them. They got into a franchise and they made the best one of them.
Yeah. I mean,
which is not always the case with number 6.
No, I must admit, number 6 in a franchise is not normally that good. No, I did rate it. I really, I was trying not to be biased, because I'd spoken to the guys previously, but that was some years ago, and I was glad to see that they were involved. And when I went to see the film, I wasn't disappointed. I was lucky enough to see it in an IMAX screen as well. Did either of you see it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's digital IMAX. It's not quite the same, but it was still, it was still nice to view it that way, and it was shot for that, because they do talk about that in interviews I've heard since. So
yeah. How did you guys? Have you guys got like a rough ranking of all six in your head?
Yeah, that's a good one.
These ones are hard for me because they're all sort of like silly fun, and like I don't know if there's things about them that really elevate them. I will say that I don't think 6 is the best in my mind. I'd probably put it in either third or fourth, I think. I definitely, my favorite one of the bunch is the first one. Like I think it's the cleanest, and I think it works really well. I think because I have a personal affiliation with being afraid of airplanes, that I sort of have a favoritism towards that, and I love the second one, especially because I like that they threw in that wrinkle of that it's working backwards to kind of like correct the errors that it made with the first movie. But this is, I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was a good movie. I loved the added wrinkle of going after the family trees. Was, I thought, a very nice little extra. Like, hey, we're doing the formula, but it's a little something different to the formula. We're not changing how anything works, but we're just like exploring a different avenue of how it works. I think that was a really great thing. If I had any beef with the new one, it's the same beef that I have with a lot of movies that are nowadays, is that way too much of it was shot on a green screen, and it's so unbearably noticeable that it pulls me out of everything about it. Like the entire beginning part in the restaurant, like I just felt like no one was ever actually there, that they were just standing up against a big green wall. There was that scene where they were just like standing in a cemetery, and that was like shot on a soundstage with the green screen. I'm like, why did they not just go to a cemetery? Like this scene now feels really weird and fake and flatly lit because it's like green screen lit, and I really wish that they had just gone to a cemetery. But things like that, that always detracts from a movie for me, because I feel like it makes it look uglier. Not as ugly as the weird CG of Part 4 and even a chunk of Part 5.
Geez.
But it's a different kind of weird CG. So it always pulls me out.
Yeah, I mean 4 and 5, I think they felt a bit weird and a bit janky because of the 3D thing. I think kind of because I think it was post conversion. I don't think it was in camera.
Right.
I might have that wrong. I can't remember now. It's a long time since I watched all the featurettes and stuff. But and obviously the Final Destination was always supposed to be the last one, wasn't it? Even though, I mean, Final Destination 5 is a prequel, one could argue. So, but
I think everyone can agree that I think generally everyone can agree that Part 4 is the worst one. I think that's pretty commonplace amongst everything, that Part 4 is the odd one out. Even though I still think it's fun, but it's definitely not. It's the worst of the batch.
Yeah, it's weird because they brought David R. Ellis back, who did 2. He came back for 4. James Wong obviously did 1 and 3. And then they had a different director for 5, and obviously these guys now for 6. But I've not because I didn't I wanted to do what Al did, but I didn't get time to rewatch them all, unfortunately, before this. I've got a huge list of things to watch right now. So I went straight into Bloodlines, knowing the franchise pretty well. But yeah, Bloodlines feel, I don't know. You see, the first 2 I really like. I really like the first 2 films. 3, 4, and 5 kind of blend in a little bit to me. I can't sort of differentiate which one's which easily. But what I liked about Bloodlines is the fact that it added to the mythology. Yes, we got the family thing, but it also kind of implied, without it being sort of a major retcon, you had, obviously, because it went back to the 60s and you had the young Bloodworth involved in that. And when it came up to sort of present day, the character that had done the granddaughter that had done all the research, again, I haven't been at a sort of, I've only seen it once at the cinema, so this is the sort of thing, freeze framing on home media would be great. But I'm not sure, but the chart and the sort of research she's done, I think, incorporates the other films, right? Or is it all new stuff? I assumed there was a picture of an airplane, so I assumed it incorporated the films.
This is one of the questions I've had for myself, is like, a reason I want to go back and see it again and probably pause it a bit, because if it doesn't, they've missed something there, because I think they've really lucked out with finding a new thing in Bloodlines where they can explain this decades of everything and all of these offshoots and stuff. And to me, I was like, I hope all of 2, 3, 4, and 5 are in this somewhere, because you could so easily go, yeah, they're all related in some way to the original restaurant thing. But I don't know. Maybe Josh's very trained eye managed to see it all, but I was like, ah!
Well, there has been discussion, because I guess that there at one point that they did discuss the possibility of having the restaurant be the beginning of it all, like that was the first incident that kind of like set off all of the other incidences. But they decided to scrap that because they said it just didn't make sense for things overall. But there are, if I'm correct, I believe that the teacher from the first movie,
Yeah.
I was going to say her name, but I can't remember her name. But the woman that dies with all the knives in her, and then her house blows up. I believe that she was cited as being somebody that was connected to the restaurant. I think she's on the board.
Is that Valerie Luton?
Yes, Miss Luton. That's there you go.
That's
you.
it.
Yeah. Okay, that would be really cool, because what I took from it, and again, you're trying to enjoy the film, but also take all this stuff in and start thinking about the background and all this. I mean, obviously there were a lot of people in the restaurant on that day. A hell of a lot of people died, and of course, if those they went off to or have families, so we're talking about tens of thousands of people over those generations, if it's branched off that many times and whatever. So the first 5 films could have been just a selection.
Exactly. That's what I loved about it. I was like, you could say, if they were all to do with those families from the restaurant, we could have 20 years and we'll still never find out all the different. But it's that they've just, again, it feels like they've just lucked out and found like, oh, you could really keep this going forever, because you can just say, oh yeah, well, these are all connected now to that. And it wouldn't feel stupid. Like,
I was gonna say, you've got 60 years of mythology just from the pre-credit, the first part of this film, right? So I mean,
and it just feels like they've earned that somehow. It's not like, oh, Michael Myers has a new family, and just like, there's not that. It just feels like, yeah, that makes sense. And I think when your villain is death itself, you get away with a lot more, because that's been around for eternity. It will be around for eternity. That's a very, again, it's just like, it's a great concept that you can do so much with.
Yeah. And also the other good thing in terms of making it accessible, because again, we're all nerds about this stuff. Particularly you, Al, that if you go back and like literally rewatch everything for these things, you've got like with Halloween and Friday the 13th and everything, that's a hell of a lot of material to go through, right? Whereas the clever thing about Bloodlines, I think, is yes, you've got the Tony Todd character, but I feel that you don't really need to have seen all the other films to make it work. You can kind of, this could be your sort of jumping off point. I don't know. Do you guys disagree with that, or do you sort of feel the same?
Really quick. I was looking this up in the meantime because we were talking about it.
Sorry,
but no, because there was something about the restaurant being like the starting point for everything and being where all the other films branched off to. And I was trying to search because I just read recently about them saying that they had originally wanted that to be the case, where that was, where all of the movies kind of stemmed from. But the problem with that is that if in order for that to have been the origin for everything, so that every movie is just Death trying to clean up from this one restaurant thing, is that the character's parents didn't have to die first, because that's what Bloodlines establishes. It's working its way down the bloodline, and then like the older person, then the young person. But like in the Clear's parents didn't die, and Alex's parents didn't die, or whatever like that. So that kind of means that doesn't work in the terms of all of those deaths being it, but it could be like an aspect of it. Anyhow, I'm sorry that I was trying to find that because I know we mentioned that before, and I was just like, wait a minute, I know I read that just recently, but so that's.
Hey, but then in like Final Destination 24, we'll find out that everyone in all those films was adopted, so it's fine.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, and that's the one that's in space. That's the one that's in space as well, too.
In space, yeah.
I mean, this film is done very well, actually. We talk about people going to the cinema, going back to the cinema, and all this. From my understanding, the box office on this has been pretty decent, next to its sort of production budget. And I don't know. Do you think that will mean more of these? Do you feel like they're not done? Death is not done, right?
Come on, it made a lot of money. Of course, there's going to be more. Without a doubt.
Yeah. This made decent money, and it has that rare combination these days where it made a lot of money, but also it is genuinely good. And I think people, like by and large, critics and fans are just like, yeah, this was great.
Yeah.
And that is, again, like we said, a sixth film, especially after a big old gap. And it doesn't feel, this is exactly what Josh was saying, when it's like, this never feels like this is a franchise that everyone's been clamoring for the next one. It's just like, it suddenly showed up and everyone went, oh yeah, that'd be fun. But no one's like, well, we need it. And so the fact that it has made a lot of money, I think speaks to the quality of what it is, but also this franchise is just so good to like be in an audience for.
Yes.
And I think then, horror has that anyway. I think horror is always, I think most films are always best on a big screen, but I think horror, sharing that fear and that experience, that energy that moves around a room that you can't really put your finger on, is great. But I think there's something about this, again, it's tapping into little specific fears that everyone in that room will have. I think it's tapping into the fun of how elaborate you can go, and that you sharing that with a bunch of strangers is always just more energetic than watching it by yourself. It's just gonna be. But I do like they've got to make another one. This is done way too well.
if what you read online is correct, and we know there's a lot of misinformation out there as well as information, but apparently the budget was 50 million, and the box office has been 260 million, and you think that's not even allowing for home media as well. Which these are the kind of films, again, particularly if they heavily load them, do well with collectors, with the physical media stuff. And having interviewed that time Zach and Adam, I think they're the kind of guys that will probably, if the project allows for it, do things like audio commentaries and featurettes and all of that sort of stuff to go on the the physical media version, which is great, because I mean that's kind of a dying thing in itself now, not just physical media, but the having things like commentaries and extras and all that are kind of few and far between. And that's where, again, horror for some reason seems to bypass that, because the fan base are nerdy people, you know, that like to that like to.
Well, we want everything, don't we? We just want to like experience every bit of it. I didn't know that about the budget. That's surprisingly high, I think.
Well, I mean, again,
especially with all those digital effects and everything that it had going on, it sounds about right.
No, I think within itself it sounds right. I'm surprised that a franchise, like I say, that people were not clamoring for that. Oh, two relatively inexperienced directors, got 50 million. When you think, like, I know we agree or disagree about David Gordon Green's Halloweens, but like none of them were more than 20 million, maybe. Really? And those were like, people were clamoring for that. You know, those were not. They were a lot cheaper. Those.
All I'll say here, without getting too off topic, is The Exorcist was the film that made me definitely make up my mind about him as a filmmaker.
I'm going to say this as well about my good friend Elliot, who's probably going to watch this. You two would highly agree on that.
Yes.
Cannot convince him to come around on Halloween Kills either.
But the good news is on that franchise, on the Exorcist, is Mike Flanagan's going to get involved, and that's somebody that does know what they're doing in horror.
Yes, but because we didn't manage to get together and do this Exorcist chat, let's just do 2 minutes here, because I had this on. We do these shows and they're about horror franchises, and I absolutely love that. I love doing them. And I think and I also love, even when the majority of the films in a franchise are objectively bad, I also love that these franchises keep going and going.
Oh, for sure.
I think, having looked at it for, what is it? It's 52 years we've had The Exorcist in the movie realm. It is not a story that should be part of a franchise at any point. And I think if Mike Flanagan might make the greatest Exorcist movie since The Exorcist, and I'll still be like, yeah, it shouldn't be that. You can make other films about exorcism. Go ahead. People do it all the time. It's like 5 a year. Whatever. Probably don't care about most of them. But The Exorcist should have just been that film.
Yes.
And for God's sake, studios and distributors should just stop trying to franchise it.
It's a very muddled franchise, isn't it? You've got one. The first film is one of the best films of all time, and then everything afterwards is all sorts of problematic, isn't it? Although
no. Hey, you take that back, because Exorcist 3 is an amazing movie. I love Exorcist 3, I also love Exorcist 2 for all the wrong reasons, but I love it. It's so much fun.
Hey, yes, 3 is great. 2 is mad and fun and like a weird 70s nightmare, and I dig that. None of them should have anything to do with The Exorcist. That it devalues that story just being this perfect.
Don't forget, 2 very different prequels. But no, somebody's.
I have a brief side story if you want to. This is a real quick side story having to do with that new Exorcist movie. Sorry to derail her, but one of my kids, when she was in preschool, one of her classmates, their father is a famous guy, and so I'd see him every day. I don't know if I want to say the name, but anyhow. So I'd see the guy every single day. We chit chat and whatever. And the one day we they had all the kids go and play at the park and everything, and all the parents were there. And he like walked up to me and was just like, "Yeah, you've got the YouTube thing, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." So we started talking about, and he was just like, because he's been in a couple of horror movies, and we talked about that. And he's like, "Yeah," he's like, my good buddy, David Gordon Green. He did the Halloween things, whatever. Like I was like, "Oh, you're friends with David?" He's like, "Yeah, he's doing The Exorcist now." And I said, "Oh man," I said, "Will you just do me a favor, man? Just can you just tell him, please, just don't screw that up." And he laughed, and he's like, I will tell him. And we laughed, whatever. And we traded emails and everything like that. And it's funny because after the movie came out and I saw it, I actually sent him an email. I was just like, you didn't tell him, did you?
Yes. No.
And here's the really controversial bit. I quite liked that film.
Oh,
that is
But
good.
it has nothing. It has no place trying to be related to The Exorcist.
Yeah.
And
Well,
the fact that it needed to be made, that was all the bad stuff about it. If it was just a film about possession, I think there was lots of good stuff in it.
Yeah.
I think it's the fact that it's like, oh, we now need to do what you did with Halloween to The Exorcist. We need to bring Ellen Burstyn back in a terrible way. We need to do all of this stuff. And you're like,
awful.
that's ruined it.
Yeah, that was just. To be fair, the first half I thought was actually okay, and then when Ellen Burstyn came back, and then of course what happens? I don't want to spoil it, but I was just like, this is absolutely ridiculous, and it just brought up all the things I hated about the Halloween reboots or soft sequels or whatever you want to call them. But but anyway, on the, I said I've got this list of things to watch that's forever growing. Somebody has recommended, actually, I've never seen them, it is on the list, but there's a lot of things on the list. Apparently the Exorcist TV show was decent.
Good. It's good.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Is it?
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And it fits in. It does fit into the timeline.
Yeah, but it shouldn't. It doesn't need to, and that's the only downfall. Again, it's every time they try and relate it to the original thing, you're like, that's weakened it. If it was just another a cool thing about exorcism.
It doesn't is it Gina Davis plays Reagan in it?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It works well enough for what it is. I mean, it's Keith, it's not a go watch this right now kind of a thing, but it's like yeah, they're pretty good.
Yeah.
And did it have a conclusion, or was it one of these things that ended, and then didn't get renewed? Because I hate that about TV. That drives me nuts.
I don't know. I only, because again, I don't really watch TV. I only saw the first season. So
all right, fair enough.
Yeah, I can't remember. I feel like the second season was like a kind of a disconnected story, so it felt almost like anthology seasons. But I can't. Yeah, I'm not even sure I got to the end of it. To be fair, it was like I remember thinking like the first season.
Coming from you,
good stuff.
Coming from you, well, you're Mr. Completist. You are Mr.
Film franchises, yes. TV shows, some that I've watched 100 times, like 24, yes. But if it's a show like that where I'm like, yeah, I'll take it or leave it, I probably won't finish it.
Talking of being completists, Final Destination, apparently there is some expanded media in the form of novels and comic books. Just wondered, I've not, but have you guys delved into any of that stuff?
I actually have read the comic. I did a video not that long ago about horror comics that you didn't know existed. And
how did I miss that? Okay.
Final Destination was one of the things that I covered, because there's two different comic books for that. There was a limited series and then there was a one shot. And the one shot came out. It was one of those ones that was like packaged with a DVD, but then they had a limited series that came out. And I haven't read the novels, but when I did my unanswered questions on the Final Destination movies, I did research on the novels. So I did read people talking about the novels and what they were. And in terms of like survivors of the franchise, in terms of the films, the only two people that have like made it out of the entire franchise alive are Kimberly and Bart from the second movie. But there are characters that have survived the novels. The novels have had, I think, two characters that lived through them, always using that new life method of like they die and are restored back to life. So the novels are consistent with the films in that is the only way to escape death's plan is to die and then be revived. The comic book, everyone dies.
I will be checking that video out in about an hour's time then, because that's one of yours that somehow I've missed. So I will.
In fact, as soon as this finishes, everyone, including us, go and watch that. I think
yes, absolutely.
Sounds like the perfect sequel.
How else are you going to know about the humanoids from the Deep comic book?
Wow! Yeah! Wow! Jeez.
Yeah, Deep Cut. I think because you did one. I think you did one. I have watched that where you did one on the Nightmare on Elm Street. Comic books. I'm sure I've watched. Is that a separate video? Because I'm sure I've watched that.
Yeah, I did a whole video on all of the Friday the 13th comic books, and I did one on all the Nightmare comic books. I think those are, and then this with the various horror comics.
Fantastic. All right, I will check those out, and encourage other people to do so as well if they're so entertained by this to this point. So anything else, guys? I mean, I don't know. There's plenty to talk about here, but anything specific, or are you kind of happy that you've had your say?
I will say, because we talked a little bit about the fourth movie, but there was apparently a whole lot of behind the scenes shenanigans with that one, and like the director basically disowns it and says that like they gave us such a short window of time that we he had to rewrite the entire script in like a day, and he just hates it and hates what it's become, and he said I could write an entire book about like everything that went wrong behind the scenes. I'm really curious to see what the original, like if he had been given time and space, I wonder what would have become of that movie.
Yeah. It does feel like one of those.
The NASCAR bit was pretty cool though at the beginning. I mean, again, it was totally playing into the 3D thing. Like,
I think that's part of the. There's a lot of films from that era, and then also like the early '80s era, where you can just absolutely see, because you often see those or hear those interviews with directors and stuff where they're like, oh, it was a nightmare because of this and this, and you can totally see that there's a gimmick that's come into it, whether it's shot 3D or that became the thing that has so derailed it in a lot of ways. And I think with 4, the NASCAR thing's a great idea, and like the way each person gets killed in that is so ridiculous and inventive and fun, but the effects are so bad. Like the CG bit of it is so bad, and it just, to me, it felt like, oh, you put all the budget towards making sure the 3D worked, whether that was production or post, that you've run out of all money for everything else, including, is this good?
Yes.
And I think like that's how it feels for the whole thing. And so like I feel for that guy. He's probably like, oh, if I didn't have to do the 3D, if I'd have made it 5 years later, that wouldn't have been an issue. And
exactly, that's the whole business thing, isn't it? And we were, not all films were going to look like Avatar when they were put in 3D, were they? It was kind of like, come on, guys. And but
we've spoken about it before on this, like Friday the 13th 3 in 3D. A lot of people really like a lot about it, but you read interviews, you read anything about it from the time, and it was like the 3D was so hard and so time consuming, and it's all anyone was focused on, that everything else just didn't matter during the making of it. And that seems time and time again, especially when it's 3D, like in genre stuff where the budget isn't going to be James Cameron, and you don't have 15 years to make one film, and it's like,
and also the home video market never experienced it that way anyway, and that's where so many of the audience discovered it.
Films. And I think that's the thing with Final Four, is like watching it. I think it's on. Did I watch it on Netflix? I think it's on Netflix. I watched it on Netflix, and you're like, oh, it's the 3D one. It just looks even worse now that I can't even see that, because I can see that you're throwing stuff, but it's not 3D. So it's aged so much more than the original, despite it being newer.
For sure. No, I agree with that. And as I said, 5, which was also in 3D, but 5, I kind of quite enjoyed 5 at the time. As I said, I was really bothered by that cell phone thing, and it completely made sense at the end. So it's just kind of That just shows you how, smartphones and things in our culture of, they do date movies, don't they? They very much date movies nowadays, technology.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
5, I enjoyed 5, but I think it's overshadowed 5 in a good way by the ending, because I think especially the first time going, oh, that's so cool, it's the beginning of, and we've seen a lot more prequels since then. They've become a lot
Even though
more
they
of,
got the date wrong on the boarding
even
pass.
though, even though the date's wrong. But I always think of that one as like, oh, the one that ends at the start of one. And
Yeah.
which means is slightly unfairly, then I kind of forget what happens in the
Forget the
rest of
rest
it.
of the film.
I
Yeah.
think
I get it.
the inciting accident is probably the weakest as well.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, the bridge collapse. It's like, yeah, that's a good common fear thing, but it's not quite as visceral as any of the others, I think.
I thought it
Doesn't
was
quite
stronger
have the
than
same.
I thought it was stronger than the NASCAR one. I will admit that the NASCAR one didn't really do much for me. I thought that the bridge was a little bit stronger, but I mean, I think it's splitting hairs. But
Yeah.
But I also say the fifth one, I enjoy the fifth one. I actually think the fifth one's pretty darn good. But the fifth one introduces such a great concept with the whole idea of if you murder somebody, you actually get their remaining years, however much they had left. And I will say that I thought that was great, but then they don't really do anything with it. Like they kind of like they
the plane crashed on them, didn't it?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I just wish that they had done a little bit more with it,
Yeah. And it's interesting now that we know that's a prequel, that it's like, yeah, that people should have been doing that in all of them after that point, in a way.
Yeah.
Because it's like you discovered this new thing, but you actually discovered it before all of these other accidents have happened.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of thing that someone could discover in part 7 or part 9 or whatever it is. So,
well, it does make sense though, because that source of information for that was Bloodworth. And if Bloodworth was just like, well, if you do this, then this happens. But then Bloodworth sees that they all died like very shortly afterwards. Anyhow, I could kind of see why he wouldn't be telling other people that same. You can do this, but then like 10 minutes later, you'll probably die anyway.
Yeah.
What about in the new film? Any particular death in the new film that sort of stayed with you? I have to say the MRI machine sequence was particularly nasty.
I thought that's probably the most fun, but I was slightly taken out of it, and it's maybe I missed something, because he'd had the false death, and then we were like, oh, he won't die because he's not a part of it. So then it was like, oh, so is his death in the MRI in order for the other guy to die? But to me, I was like, doesn't this slightly break the rules? And it just, even though it was really fun, I was like, oh, have I missed a rule here? And it slightly just like disconnected me from it, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Well, they threw it out there because Bloodworth says if you try to interfere with Death's plans, then things get nasty. So he wasn't on any sort of list. He was just collateral damage, where it's just like, look, you're in my way.
Yes. Okay.
I will say that the death that I thought was interesting, because it's funny, because I remember seeing it and I knowing afterwards, but I guess that the trash compactor death scene apparently, and I'm kind of curious to rewatch it. I guess that was done practically. Like they actually had there was a TikTok I saw that actually showed it, where like the thing that was advancing actually had plates that moved, and it like slid with her face.
Oh,
nice. And I'm kind of like, I would like to rewatch it to actually see that in action. But like when they showed the behind the scenes thing, I was like, oh, that looks pretty cool. So
yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I thought, oh, that felt practical. I hope it was. Yeah, that's good. I actually liked I can't remember her name at all. Like the woman that's old from the 60s, that's old. Yeah. Like when she just kept going, I'll stop fucking around to death, speaking to him. And then she just went, fuck it. It was like, after all of this, you've spent all these decades and decades of like learning this. And then she just went, God.
Yeah.
now's my time. It's just so instant. I was like, that's a pretty cool thing to do. It's like, it was a good way of doing that. Yeah.
I am looking forward. I do know that I guess that there was reshoots on the ending because apparently the mother, the mother that dies at the ending of the movie gets smashed by the thing. I guess that she had originally died at the hospital, like right after the MRI.
Okay.
So
Now,
let's kind of see where that went.
Here's my. I'm glad you brought that up because here's a thing that I was thinking. So before the very end, and again we've said that we're going to spoil this, so it's fine. Before the very end, the main character pricks her finger, which again has been a bit of a motif through these films. Yeah. So does that mean that the ending we saw is the premonition? It's not what actually happens. So if they did bring another film, they could still be alive, the same characters, knowing that the train's going to come off the track again because of the penny, which I thought was quite fun. The penny from the annoying little kid back in the 50s. Oh, sorry, the 60s. Yes. was thrown off the top of the tower and stuff. But yeah, I don't know, because in the other, like in the fifth one, for example, he pricks his finger, cuts his finger, doesn't he, before, and he sees the bridge accident.
Yeah.
So does that mean that what we saw with the train and the logs and the derailing was the premonition, not the actual death?
No, because during the credits, they actually showed you a news article about their death.
Yeah.
Did they? Oh my god! I need to rewatch it. I've forgotten that already. Okay.
Yeah,
they're quite like James Bondy end credits, aren't they? They're like all the.
They show a bunch of different news articles, and one of them is that they died. So they're gone. They're done.
Okay. Damn.
Right.
All right. I thought I had a theory there that doesn't hold up then. Damn it. But okay, fair enough. I am looking for, I actually do want to go and see it again. I have to admit, I kind of I'm keen to revisit it. Because I'll find that with stuff like that, I'll pick out little details that I missed the first time round. Again, that's what's great about all these Easter eggy type franchise things where they've got you can watch something and then you can watch it again from a different perspective because you know then what the twist is or whatever. So yeah, it's good. Cool. Okay. Anything else you guys want to add? We even got our mini Exorcist episode in there as well. Just about.
The conclusion, I think, being stop trying to make the Exorcist films.
Yeah. Although
just make something else.
Although if anyone's going to make a good one, it's going to be Flanagan. So
yes, I agree. Come on, Flanagan's track record's awesome.
You like Dr. Sleep?
Oh my god, yes! I love Dr. Sleep. In fact, watch the extended again. Check out my my videos on this channel. I've got a thing about the extended release on Blu-ray, but that's even better. Especially if you're a Rebecca Ferguson fan. Yeah. But anyway, enough of this. So, Josh, I put this up for people viewing it on YouTube, but for our listeners, tell us how people can get a hold of you and more about your book and all of that sort of stuff.
Well, actually, I now have a run of books that are available online, and that are the 80s Project books, which I've been doing, as well as Timelines of Terror, which you can get on McFarlandBooks.com. But also just go to Movie Timelines and check out the channel there. And if you got some time, go to Tubi and watch the last Amityville movie.
Yes, no, absolutely. Sorry, I need to update the slide slightly. But if you've got any links or anything, Josh, any new ones, send them to me and I'll put them in the show notes down below. But yeah, check out Movie Timelines, a great channel, lots of information in there, presented in a very fun way. So yeah, absolutely check that out if you're watching or listening to this and you've enjoyed it. Again, this might be out of date, Al, but how can people find you?
Yeah, no, that'll do. This is the bit I'm absolutely the worst at. So I recommend that everyone watches your channels, you two, instead. Um, you know, if
What
not,
about
if you must
you?
find me, Google me. I don't know.
Hold on now. You did have a podcast, If You're Happy and You Know It, right? Is that still running?
Yes, yeah, sometimes, yeah, it's much more sporadic than it was. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we do it an awful lot. I produce a few podcasts for other people. I'm producing a lot of kind of stand-up comedy specials at the moment. So I guess if there's like a UK comedian that you've watched their special of, there's a high chance I had something to do with it. So that's nice. But apart from that, just
Yeah,
enjoy your lives.
yeah, but you've had some quite entertaining podcasts that I've listened to that sort of delve into different genre film series and stuff, right? Or am
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remembering
I
that?
do. No,
Yeah,
no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, random conversations about
that's it.
movies.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the other
that's
thing. I
awesome.
think, yeah, thank you very much. There you go.
No,
Yeah,
that's
I'm
awesome.
a lot of
You've
these
got
things I start and then get incredibly busy and don't keep
yeah,
up with very well, and
but they exist,
you know
and
how it
you've
is.
got them covering things like Tom Clancy novels, right? I've listened to
It's
those.
the John
Star
Grisham
Wars,
novels. Yeah, yeah,
Star Wars
John Grisham stuff.
prequels, Star Wars
Yeah, yeah.
prequels, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, it's part of my along with Josh's timeline stuff. It's part of my regular viewing.
Oh, great. Well, that's nice. Yeah. No,
That's
yeah,
cool.
like I say, there's always stuff. I've always got ideas and things, and life gets in the way. But yeah, always making something or other. Yeah,
It certainly does. It certainly
yeah,
does.
of
I struggle with those things as well. Obviously,
course.
if you're watching this online, you're already on Home Media Minefield. Check out. We also do, physical media reviews and unboxings, as obviously the name of the channel would suggest. But we've got a lot of other um, videos covering things, as I said, like Saw and Halloween and Texas Chainsaw and all sorts of things. So if you've enjoyed those have both involved Al and Josh. So if you've enjoyed them as guests on this, check them out on that as well. I'm also going to put a link in the show notes to the podcast that I mentioned with Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein, because it talks about their previous film, which is called Freaks, but also they go into quite a lot of detail about how they got into the industry, which is actually quite interesting. And as I said, makes me even happier that they've since had this opportunity. So check out that as well if you found this in any way interesting. But yeah, that just leaves me then to basically say thank you, guys. As always, I find this sort of thing fun, tangents and all. It's all good fun, and it's been a pleasure to have you on. And hopefully, it won't be such a long gap until the next one. I'm sure there's another movie franchise, horror franchise coming up that we can talk about at some point. I'm sure it doesn't even have to be that; it can be anything. So
I do feel like there's still a little time. If we did it quick, Mission Impossible feels like it's right there,
oh,
right?
yeah, again, huge fan of that.
Yeah.
I've
I have
already done
not.
podcasts and stuff about,
I haven't seen an entire Mission Impossible movie.
what?
Right. Well,
Really?
here's the thing to do: is Josh has to watch them all
I
back to
don't.
back.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, Josh.
You know
Um,
what? I will admit I am not a fan of straightforward action movies. Like if
Really?
it's sort of just like a typical genre action movie, I'm not. It just doesn't appeal to me. It doesn't really interest me. I either need like one of those like weird, like bizarro action movies like Crank or something like that, or like it's just a strange exploitation kind of action movie. Those are the ones that I will enjoy. But if it's like kind of just a regular modern Hollywoody kind of action film, I just like something like Bullet Train. I have no
but
interest.
you love Bond movies because that's how I found you in the first place. I mean,
I
obviously the Bond timelines are absolutely all over the place, but
I although I will admit, I love classic Bond movies. I like the weird Bond movies where he has like all those strange gadgets and like goofy stuff and all these weird scenarios or whatever. I am not a fan of the modern Bond flicks. I thought Casino Royale was great, but it was such an anomaly because all of the rest of the Daniel Craig movies put me to sleep.
Well,
but,
I would argue actually that the Mission Impossible films, you know, some of the latter ones have actually been, I would say, more entertaining than some of the latter Bond films.
Yeah.
So,
definitely.
And you could have a filled day with timelines when it comes to the Mission Impossible franchise. I mean, the continuity is a lot better than it's been with Bond, obviously, but at the same time, if you want to link it back to its original series and all of that, there's all sorts of shenanigans there. But that's a whole nother thing. Maybe we will do one. I'll tell you what, anybody watching this, is particularly if you're still watching us and you've come this far, if you want us to do that, stick it down in the comments and let us know. And if enough people want it, then we'll do it. As they say,
if enough people want it, Josh has a lot of homework.
They will come. Lovely. Yeah. All right. Anyway, we will see you next time on the next edition of Home Media Minefield presents Let's See What's Out There. Bye for now.